Two tourists were driving through Wisconsin. As they were approaching Oconomowoc, they started arguing about the pronunciation of the town's name. They argued back and forth until they stopped for lunch. As they stood at the counter, one tourist asked the blonde employee, "Before we order, could you please settle an argument for us? Would you please pronounce where we are, very slowly?" The blonde girl leaned over the counter and said, "Burger King." A blonde tried to sell her old car. She was having a lot of problems selling it because her car had 250,000 miles. One day she told her problem to a friend she worked with. The friend told her, "There is a way to make the car easier to sell, but it's not legal." "That doesn't matter," replied the blonde. "Okay," said the friend. "Here's the address of a friend of mine. He owns a car repair shop. Tell him I sent you, and he will turn the counter in your car back to 50,000 miles. Then it shouldn't be a problem selling your car." The following weekend, the blonde made the trip to the mechanic. About 1 month after that, the friend asked the blonde, "Did you sell your car?" "No," replied the blonde. "Why should I? It only has 50,000 miles on it." A blonde walks into the police department looking for a job. The officer wants to ask her a few questions.
What's 2 plus 2?
4.
What's the square root of 100?
10?
Good. Now who killed Abraham Lincoln?
I don't know.
Well, you can go home and think about it. Come back tomorrow.
The blonde goes home and calls up one of her friends, who asks her if she got the job. The blonde says excitedly, "Not only did I get the job, I'm already working on a murder case." Where were you born? The United States. Which part? My whole body. A beautiful blonde goes out with a bodybuilder. Things go well, and by their 4th date, she wants to take it to the next level. They reach her apartment and, after a nice dinner, begin to kiss and take their clothes off. The blonde says, "Oh, wow, what a great chest you have." He says, 100 pounds of dynamite, babe." He takes off his pants, and the blonde says, "Oh, what massive calves you have." "That's 100 pounds of dynamite, babe." He then removes his underwear, and the blonde runs off screaming in fear. He rushes to put his clothes back on and chases after her. He finally catches up with her. "Why'd you run away?" She says, "With all that dynamite, I ran when I saw how short the fuse was."
Two croupiers are sitting bored at the roulette of the casino. Suddenly a very attractive blonde woman enters and bets $20,000 on a roll, saying, "I hope you do not mind, but I feel very lucky when I play naked." With that, she unbuttons the zipper, takes her dress and underwear off, throws the dice and yells, "Come on baby, mama needs new clothes." She looks with agony and as soon as the dice stops, starts jumping up and down screaming, "Yes, yes, yes, I won." She embraces one of the dealers, taking her profits and clothes, and disappears. The guys are looking dumbfounded at each other. Eventually, one asks, "Did you see what dice she rolled?" "I do not know. I thought you were watching."
A blonde was driving down the motorway when her car phone rang. It was her husband, urgently warning her. "Honey, I just heard on the news that there's a car going the wrong way on the M25. Please be careful."
It's not just one car. There's hundreds of them.
A blonde was cruising down the highway at breakneck speed when a cop pulled her over.
May I see your license and registration, please?
Asked the cop. Miffed, the blonde said,
I wish you guys would get your act together. Just yesterday you took away my license. Now today you want me to show it to you?
One day, a blonde walks into a doctor's office with both of her ears burnt. The doctor asks her what happened. She says, "Well, when I was ironing my work suit, the phone rang, and I mistakenly picked up the iron instead of the phone."
Well, that explains one ear, but what about the other?
The bastard called again.
Two blondes were taking their first train trip to Warsaw on the train. A vendor came down the corridor selling bananas, which they'd never seen before. Each bought one. The first one eagerly peeled the banana and bit into it just as the train went into a tunnel. When the train emerged from the tunnel, she looked across to her friend and said, "I wouldn't eat that if I were you." "Why not?" "I took one bite and went blind for half a minute."
Two bowling teams, one made up of all blondes and one of all brunettes, charter a double-decker bus for a weekend tournament in Atlantic City. The brunette team rides in the bottom of the bus, and the blonde team rides on the top level. The brunette team down below is whooping it up and having a great time when one of them realizes she doesn't hear anything from the blondes upstairs. She decides to go up and investigate. When the brunette reaches the top, she finds all the blondes frozen in fear, staring straight ahead at the road and clutching the seats in front of them. The brunette says, "What's going on up here? We're having a great time downstairs." One of the blondes says, "Yeah, but you got a driver."
Three construction workers are on the 75th floor of a non-finished building. The Italian opens his lunchbox to find a pizza and says, "Man, if I get the pizza one more time, I'm gonna jump off of this building and fall to my death." The Chinese man opens his lunchbox to find rice and says, "Man, if I get rice one more time, I'm going to jump off this building and fall to my death." The blonde opens his lunchbox to find a cheeseburger and says, "Man, if I get a cheeseburger one more time, I'm gonna jump off this building and fall to my death." So the next day, they all got the same thing, and they jumped off the building to their death. That weekend at the funeral, the Italian and the Chinese wives are crying and saying, "I would have fixed him something else for lunch, but he never told me." And as the two wives stare at the blonde's wife, they both ask why she isn't sad about her husband's death. The blonde replies, "Don't look at me. He packs his own lunch."
A blonde, brunette, and red-headed mothers go to a cafe. They had each stolen their daughters' purses to see what their girls did in their free time. The redhead mom opens her daughter's purse first and finds a pack of cigarettes. "Oh my God, Debbie smokes! I'm going to kill her!" The brunette mom opens her daughter's purse second, holding up a half-smoked joint. "Lindsay smokes pot? How could she?" The blonde mom rifles through her daughter's purse next and pulls out an empty condom wrapper. The other moms stare at her for a few moments before she puts her hand over her mouth. "Holy shit! Cindy has a penis!"
A blonde was visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time. She wanted to see the Capitol building. Fortunately, she couldn't find it, so she asked a police officer for directions. "Excuse me, officer, how do I get to the Capitol building?" The officer replied,
Wait here at this bus stop for the number 54 bus. It'll take you right there.
She thanked the officer, and he drives off. 3 hours later, the police officer returned to the same area, and sure enough, the blonde is still waiting at the same bus stop. The officer got out of his car and said,
Excuse me, but to get to the Capitol building, I said wait here for the number 54 bus. That was 3 hours ago. Why are you still waiting?
The blonde replied, "Don't worry, officer. It won't be long now. The 45th bus just went by." Two blondes are sitting on a bench at the park. "Hey, which is farther, California or the moon?" "Well, duh. Can you see California?"
A blonde was standing in front of a soda machine, muttering, "You're a dumb-looking button. You don't have much of a future either. You're gonna be replaced by a much better-looking button." "What are you doing?" her girlfriend asked. The blonde quickly pointed to the sign on the front of the machine that read, "Depress button for ice." A blonde gets lost in her car in a snowstorm. She remembers her father's advice. If you ever get stuck in a snowstorm, wait for a snowplow and follow it. Soon, a snowplow comes by, and she follows it for about 45 minutes. Finally, the driver of the truck gets out and asks her what she's doing. She explains the advice her father had given her. The driver says, "Well, I'm done with the parking lot here at the mall. Now you can follow me over to the bank." A blonde, wanting to earn some money, decided to hire herself out as a handyman type and started canvassing a wealthy neighborhood. She went to the front door of the first house and asked the owner if he had any jobs for her to do. "Well, you can paint my porch. How much will you charge?" The blonde said, "How about $50? The man agreed and told her that the paint and other materials that she might need were in the garage. The man's wife, inside the house, heard the conversation and said to her husband, "Doesn't she realize that the porch goes all the way around the house?" The man replied, "She should. She was standing on it." A short time later, the blonde came to the door to collect her money. "You're finished already?" he asked. "Yes," the blonde answered. "And I had paint left over, so I gave it 2 coats." Impressed, the man reached in his pocket for $50. "And by the way," the blonde asked, "it's not a porch. It's a Ferrari."
A blonde was down on her luck. In order to raise some money, she decided to kidnap a kid and hold him for ransom. She went to the playground, grabbed a kid, took him behind a tree, and told him, "I've kidnapped you." She then wrote a note saying, "I've kidnapped your kid. Tomorrow morning, put $10,000 in a paper bag and put it under the pecan tree next to the slide on the north side of the playground. Signed, a blonde." The blonde then pinned the note to the kid's shirt and sent him home to show it to his parents. The next morning, the blonde checked, and sure enough, a paper bag was sitting beneath the pecan tree. The blonde opened the bag and found the $10,000 with a note that said, "How could you do this to a fellow blonde?"
A blonde, a brunette, and a redhead all work at the same office for a female boss who always goes home early. "Hey girls," says the brunette. "Let's go home early tomorrow. She'll never know." So the next day, they all leave right after the boss does. The brunette gets some extra gardening done. The redhead goes to a bar, and the blonde goes home to find her husband having sex with a female boss. She quietly sneaks out of the house and returns to her normal time. Later that day, "That was fun," says the brunette. "We should do it again sometime." "No way," says the blonde. "I almost got caught." when you want to hear more of the best jokes ever, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you know when the next video is coming. And if this video brightened up your day and made you laugh, go ahead and give it a like.